Right, now this is just a very simple video, so set your expectations quite low. It's almost an instructional video, but it's also a review. I'm going to be putting a new cartridge on my record player and installing a new Phono preamp. Now, I know there are people out there that are a little bit concerned about the idea of swapping over a cartridge on a record player if they haven't done it before. They think they might get it wrong or they might break something. Well, I'm here to show you that there's not all that much to it. But just taking things back to the beginning, the reason why I started down this route looking for new components for the HiFi was because I'd begun to pick up on an annoying noise, just something in the background, perhaps motor noise, very low level though. If you look at this chart, the peak is where the needle hits. So before there's nothing, there's no ground loop hum or any of that business. And then the needle comes in. This is the part before the track starts. There's just something there that was driving me a little bit potty. The problem with this record player is also you have to turn the volume a long way up. It's got a low level of output. The reason for that is because the cartridge that's on here is a moving coil cartridge. Now, as anyone knows, as soon as you spot some kind of issue, that then becomes the focus of your attention. For example, dead pixels on your TV screen or a squeak in your car. You can't ignore it. Now, this is an old record player. It's 30 years old, perhaps. I'm using it through a step-down power transformer. Perhaps that's it. I really couldn't figure out what it was, but I've come up with a very simple solution to the problem. You see, at the moment it uses a moving coil cartridge. Now, moving coil cartridges versus moving magnet cartridges, you'll find pages written about them, but one thing people will agree on, which one is the loudest, and the moving magnet cartridges will produce a louder output than a moving coil. Moving coil tend to be a little bit fiddlier. You need a better setup. I haven't really got a great turntable here. It's very sort of mid-range. Moving coil, you tend to have on a really high-end turntable and you have everything set up just perfectly. Well, I'm not that kind of person. I just want it to work. So I thought if I get a moving magnet cartridge, it will have a louder output. I'll be able to turn the volume down below the level at where I can just about hear this noise which is playing on my nerves. So that's what I've decided to do. Hopefully that's going to solve the problem. So after doing lots of reading up about cartridges, I settled on the Goldring E3. It's £100, so it's not a budget one, but it's not a high-end one either. It's a good one for testing out this theory of mine. And it says it's got a super elliptical stylus and it's an upgrade from your standard cartridge. The reviews of it, they all gave it 5 out of 5. Within its price range, of course, you can spend thousands on cartridges. But as I say, when you start to get like really high-end, then they end up being the moving coil ones with the low output, which I don't want anyway. But this was the cartridge I chose, and also I was able to get it for just under £80 from Richer Sounds. It comes in a cardboard box. You can see MM on there for moving magnet, and if we get this open, sometimes you get a more expensive box with a cartridge, of course, but I'm not really into the box. I'd rather spend the money on the cartridge. And I'm happy to see it came with the tools to fit it to the head shell. I was wondering whether or not it came with the screws, and it was hard to find that information out, so I was glad to see them in the box. You can see it's got a cover on there to protect it, and it's an unusual shape, this. It's quite an attractive design of cartridge, I think, and you can see the screw thread holes on the top, and we've got the inputs on the back. So this is my current cartridge, but as I'm not sure whether or not swapping to this moving magnet cart is actually going to fix the problem I'm having, I don't intend to discard the old cartridge, and I only put a new stylus on it a year ago. And if what I'm doing actually exacerbates the problem I'm having, I'd like to be able to easily revert back to the old cart without having to go through the whole realignment process again. So with that in mind, I bought a new head shell just to install this new cartridge on, and if it doesn't work out, I can quickly just unplug it and plug the old one back in. And I've also bought an alignment protractor. Now, this is a thing that's pretty much essential if you're going to be putting a new cartridge on the end of your tone arm. The idea is you put your cartridge on this and it'll tell you whether or not you've got it lined up right. So you put it in this section here, and looking at it from above, not where the camera is, but from above, you look at it and you can see it's dead straight on that line there. It looks off center on the camera. Ignore that. Move it to the middle and then look down there, and it should still be straight at that point. If it isn't, you've got it twisted around on the head shell. You need to adjust it. So that's the old cartridge, so I want the new cartridge to be as straight as that. So just attach the correctly coloured wire to the correct input on the back. Very simple, can't get that wrong. And put these screws in the top here. Now I'm just finger tightening them to start with, just to get it somewhere in the middle where it looks straight to me, but I'll be checking it out on that protractor thing later on. But once I've got it to a certain point, I'll just tighten it up there, and then we'll bring it across and have a look what it looks like on the record player itself. So to get rid of the old cartridge, it's just a matter of taking a plastic screw out, and that slides straight out of there. I'll keep that one safe in a box so it doesn't get damaged, and put the new one in its place, and again, of course, put the screw back in the top. Right, so let's see how good my job was at eyeballing it. And amazingly, I got it dead on first time. Looking down on that, it's perfect. There's no angle change between the two positions. This particular turntable has electronic tracking force adjustment. What that means is, once the power's applied, the arm comes under the control of servo motors, and to apply the appropriate level of tracking force, you turn the dial at the back, and those motors push the stylus down into the record with the amount you've set. So the previous one was 1.8 grams, and that's what you set on the dial. Easy enough. The new cartridge requires a different amount of tracking force to the previous one. At the bottom here it says 2 grams is recommended. So you'd think you just turn the dial to show 2 grams and that would be suitable. It isn't. You can see here I've turned it to 2 and the scales are reading approximately 4 grams. And the reason for that is because the turntable was calibrated for the cartridge that came with it, which weighs 8 grams. The new cartridge weighs a total of 10 grams, including the head shell. So I'll need to balance the tone arm to account for the new heavier cartridge. To do this, I adjust the counterweight on the end of the tone arm, which on this particular record player involves loosening a screw and sliding the weight up and down until the tone arm, which is holding the new stylus, balances horizontally. I can then tighten up the screw to hold the weight in place, put the arm back on its rest, and adjust the tracking force to show 2 grams. And to double check that it's right, I've tested it on the scales. Now, if there was a separate anti-skate dial, I might have to change the setting on that too. However, on this particular turntable, it's linked in with that tracking force dial. So the next job is to tell the Phono preamp that I've moved from a moving coil to a moving magnet cartridge. Now this Tube Box S is a little bit unusual when it comes to changing the settings. It will cope with both, but the way it does it is through these dip switches on the bottom. You have to adjust these for the left and right channel to the correct position, which will match the specifications of your cartridge. So you have to know the specs of your cartridge, you have to find those, and then you have to translate that to the on-off position of those dip switches. So with all those in their correct locations, I can now put the power back into the preamp and I can turn the preamp on, and we'll have a listen to our first record played with this new Phono cartridge. And immediately it was obvious that it was quite a bit louder than the moving coil cartridge, which it should have been. I can really turn the volume quite a way down from where I would usually listen to a record and keep it at the same volume. To illustrate the difference between the two output levels, I played the same piece of music and recorded it with a PCM recorder using the same volume output on the amplifier and the same record level on the recorder. You can see this screen here is split horizontally across the middle. We've got the moving coil cartridge at the top with its left and right channel, and then a moving magnet at the bottom. And you can see that the moving magnet is quite a little bit louder, and especially when the track starts getting going and there's more happening, it actually gets too loud for the record level that I had set. You can see it's clipping at the end there. So that just shows you how much difference between the two, because if you look up at the moving coil at the top, it's nowhere near clipping. But the big question is, did this sort out my problem with the almost imperceptible noise that no one else could hear apart from me? And the answer is yes, I can't hear it anymore either. I think if I turned the volume way up beyond the point I'd want to listen to music at, I'd probably be able to hear it again. But I'm now listening to the music at a lower volume, around about sort of 60 or something on the settings, which is way off the perhaps 75 to 80 where I'd start to recognise it. One thing I'd previously bought was this mat. I thought it might be a resonance issue. This is a cork and leather mat that's supposed to reduce vibration and things, but it didn't help, so I don't need to use that anymore. It cost me about £50. I can put the original mat back on, the one with the slats in it, so it can determine what size record you put on there. Talking of records, I'd bought a few recently as well that I hadn't wanted to play until I got this problem solved, so now I can finally enjoy some of these. So yeah, I'm really happy about this because I finally got my record player back to how I wanted it, and it's working perfectly again. There's just one more thing that I want to do though. After this experience, I've come to realise that messing around with the dip switches on the bottom of my preamp whenever I wanted to test out a new cartridge or turntable just wasn't for me. I'm also not a fan of devices that use wall warts. I prefer them to have a built-in transformer so I can use a standard power lead. And I've also got a plan for the space that this particular device has been occupying. I've been measuring up and I can free up a whole shelf if I move things around and put something else here instead. So this is coming out of the HiFi and it's going to be replaced by this. This is my new moving magnet and moving coil preamplifier, the Alva Duo from Cambridge Audio. Again, like the cartridge I bought, this isn't high-end, but it's the point at which I'm prepared to spend money. This cost me £250, which is a good amount of money, but you can spend thousands on these things. This is where I pretty much draw the line. Now you can see on the left hand side we've got the power button, another button for switching between moving coil and moving magnet, so just as simple as pressing a button on this one. And interestingly, it has a built-in headphone amplifier with a volume control on there. So you could just have your record player switched on, this switched on, all the rest of your system switched off, and listen to your records through this with your headphones. I think that's quite a nice little feature. Looking around the back here, you can see we've got a standard power plug there, so I can extend the length of that if I need to, no more messing with wall warts. We've got the output to go to the amplifier, and then on the right hand side we've got two different inputs, one for moving magnet, one for moving coil, because of course they both require a different amount of gain to one another. Also, I suppose if you had two turntables in your HiFi, as long as one was MM and the other one MC, you could plug them both into the back of here and switch between them easily using the button on the front. In the middle here we've got a balance which we can adjust between the left and right channels if for some reason our cartridge is favouring one over the other. You shouldn't really have to mess with that, but it's good that it's there. It's not a particularly heavyweight device, it's solid though, it's all metal, and I'm glad to see it's got a large rubber strip on the front and 2 feet at the back, which will stop it from moving around. My previous preamp used to move about whenever you switched it on, which annoyed me. The instructions are for both the Solo and the Duo. The Solo is just a simple moving magnet cartridge only preamp. The Duo is the one that I've got, which does both and has the headphone amplifier built in. Notice it also has an auto shutdown if there's no music comes through it for 20 minutes, but you can switch that feature off if you don't want that. Also, it tells you there about the headphone impedance, if anyone's interested in that kind of thing, as well as the specs for the moving magnet input and the moving coil. Of course, all these specs are available online, but there's a couple of things that I couldn't figure out online or even from reviews, and it's things about usability that I'm particularly interested in. The main one was, does it remember which cartridge you've chosen? I wouldn't want to have to press the button to move it from moving magnet to moving coil or vice versa every time I switch this thing on. So let's find out if it memorises the last one you use and restarts in that mode. So when you turn it on, you can see it flashing a bit here. That's kind of warming up or whatever. And then it clicks and it comes on. So it comes on in moving magnet, as you can see there. So let's move it from the moving magnet position to the moving coil. There's a reassuring click inside every time you do that. And then we'll switch it off with moving coil being selected as the last one. So let's find out now. We're going in next day, turning it on. We want it to go straight into moving coil because that's what we've got on our turntable. And yes, it does. It goes straight back into it. And I was happy to see that even when you pull the plug and then put it back in, press the on switch, it will remember whatever the last one you used was. I just like little features like that. When they don't work like that, things get a little bit frustrating. The wire that came with it was too short though. It's definitely too short for my HiFi to reach from where I wanted it to the floor where the plug is. So instead I just substituted it with one of my own, which is one of the great things you can do when a device has a built-in transformer and uses a standard plug on the back. Of course, label the plug as well. So just a matter now of plugging the turntable into the preamp. You can see the spade for the earth connector goes there and gets tightened up. That's not going to fall off. And then we've got the output, which is going into the amplifier. So this is where I plan on putting this. It's just on top of the amp here. Now this amp does have a lot of heat generated. It comes out of the top there. There's a big vent on there. And you might think, oh, don't put anything on the top. And I wouldn't normally, except it's covering pretty much just this metal section at the front, the plate, and then perhaps a centimetre or so of the vent behind. But also, because it's got a tapered base on it, the air can still escape from there. But there's a lot of ventilation behind that point. So I'm stealing about a centimetre, but I'm pretty sure the amp can cope with having the rest of the vent free. But you can see I can still get to the headphone here and the volume control and the buttons. It just goes a little bit behind that lip, but turning it on sounds as good as the previous one, really. I'm not going to say there's any great difference between the two. The output level from this preamp seems very similar to the other one, so no need to turn my volume up anymore, therefore no unwanted sounds. And also both channels are very much the same as one another as far as the output goes, so I don't need to adjust that balance on the back. Wanted to find out what happened when you plug headphones in and it deactivates the sound from the output. So just like plugging your headphones into your amplifier, the sound stops coming through your speakers until you unplug it again. So that's it. That's all I wanted to do. I wanted to get rid of an unwanted noise, which I've managed to, and I also thought it'd be better off having a preamp which I could switch between moving coil and moving magnet. So just a couple of little changes there. If you're interested in either of the things that I bought, there'll be links in the video description text box. But that's it for the moment. As always, thanks for watching.